Welcome to EEC Art Tools. We carry on today following on from the previous video, which was to do with the ultra-low emission zone expansion by the Mayor of London, Mr. Sadiq Khan. Basically, we did talk about what the ULEZ is, the coverage area, the cost per day for getting into the zone if your car didn't qualify, the new expanded area being the 32 boroughs of London. We talked about how much money has been generated over a period of time and what the money has been used for. We also talked about the associated scrappage scheme. We did also talk about the fact that is it a form of an indirect tax which is disproportionately levied upon the have-nots. And also we did look at the average cost of an electric vehicle and how the scrappage scheme works. So today, following on, we're gonna go a little bit further to discuss the most important aspect of the scheme, the scrappage scheme. The Mayor of London's £160 million ULEZ scrappage scheme. So this has been put in place to support people that have vehicles and also motorbikes, businesses with vans and wheelchair accessible vehicles that do not meet the ultra-low emission standards in London. So this scheme has been put in place to support the owners of these vehicles to actually go through the process of scrapping those vehicles or retrofitting them to bring them up to standard to help improve air quality within London. And so I'm going to go on further to go into details of how this scrappage scheme works. So looking at the scrappage scheme, we're looking at the eligibility, who qualifies for it. In the previous video, as you may know, we did discuss what vehicles do not qualify for the ULEZ zone. Now, these were petrol vehicles that were registered with DVLA, that is before 2005 and before. And also for diesel vehicles, 2015 and before. And so these are the vehicles that are most likely not meeting the Mayor's ULEZ emission standards. And so the Mayor has come up with a scrappage scheme to allow owners of these vehicles that live within the 32 boroughs of London to apply for this £160 million grant. Now, it seems to me if this is not based on a research, i.e. the fund that has been set, the £160 million, it could be that the fund may not be adequate for every person. But once again, it could be the fact that a research has been carried out and therefore this is what the Mayor thinks is the appropriate amount of money that he is willing to allocate to help people to scrap their vehicles. And so one, you're looking at who is eligible. So the person that is eligible is one, they must have those vehicles that do not meet the standards. Two, they must they have the vehicle that they must also be living in an address within the 32 boroughs of London. And as I mentioned before, you're looking at vehicles, you're looking at motorbikes, you're looking at vans, and also you're looking at wheelchair accessible vehicles. So this is the criteria. Now, the next thing is that the vehicle that one is basically putting through for this scrappage scheme, obviously in application for the grant, the vehicle must have been registered at that particular London address. I think it's on the 30th of January 2022 and before. So for example, if you have a vehicle that is registered, say May 2022, then that vehicle will not qualify. So it's only from the 30th of January 2022 and before that is registered at one of the 32 boroughs addressed in one of the 32 boroughs in London. That is the type of vehicle that is going to qualify. Now, at the time of the application, the vehicle must also have insurance. It must also have MOT and a valid road tax for that particular vehicle to qualify for the grant. Next thing is that what sort of amount can one expect to receive, obviously applying for this Mayor's Grant, £160 million scrappage scheme. For normal vehicles, applicants can expect £2,000. For motorbikes, they can expect £1,000. The scheme is more generous for people with wheelchair accessible vehicles. That actually qualifies for £10,000. Previously, this amount was £5,000 and now has been increased to £10,000. And if they want to retrofit the car to bring it up to standard, not scrapping but retrofitting it, then once again, the Mayor of London is willing to pay them £6,000, basically to basically give them £6,000 instead of £5,000, which was previously the amount. Then the next thing is that how then do you apply for this grant? So you can easily apply for this grant online. That is, if you meet the eligibility criteria, which was mentioned before, i.e. having that vehicle that is registered with the DVLA 2005, before 2005 for petrol vehicles, before 2015 for diesel vehicles, that the vehicle must have been registered at the address where you're making the application 30th January 2022 or before. Vehicle must have an MOT, must have a road tax, and must be insured. And this goes the same obviously for vans and for motorbikes and the wheelchair accessible vehicles. So once you know that you meet this eligibility criteria, then you go onto the government website, which is the TfL website, and you basically search for applying for the scrappage scheme or the grant, the scrappage scheme grant. Once you put that into Google search engine, it will basically come up, and then you can go online and put in your details, which then goes to TfL Transport for London for them to review your application. Once they are happy that you've met all the criteria and they've done your relevant identity checks, then surely the amount can then be released to you, either as a scrappage scheme, basically going to scrapping your vehicle completely, or obtaining some tram and bus passes. I'm going to talk about that in more detail as I move on to the grant options. And so this is how it's going to the process is going to work for you. So obviously, on average, an electric vehicle can cost you anything, you know, the average one can cost you anything between £30,000–35,000. And so if you do the scrappage scheme and you can actually find that money, that extra money elsewhere through a car loan or whatever, then you can actually add your scrappage money to it and purchase a vehicle that is ULEZ compliant. In all fairness, you don't have to go and buy a new electric vehicle. But once you qualify for the grant and the funds are released to you, then surely you can now look out for obtaining a vehicle that is ULEZ compliant. And so this is how the whole scheme really works. And obviously there is also the retrofitting of the vehicle, and this is more applicable to vans and wheelchair accessible vehicles. So I'm going to go to the next stage of just giving you the details of the grant options that are available to the individual that seeks to use this scheme. by the Mayor of London, Mr. Sadiq Khan, under the £160 million ULEZ scrappage scheme. And so obviously the whole idea about this scrappage scheme and this whole ULEZ idea is just basically to encourage Londoners to use less of their vehicles and use more of the public transport provided by the Mayor of London through TfL. And so this is now we're going into the grant options under the scrappage scheme. So option number 1 is just that basic vehicle that qualifies, that meets all the eligibility criteria. So the person wants to basically scrap this vehicle and basically buy a vehicle that is ULEZ compliant, or buy a new electric vehicle. That person, when they process the application, they are going to receive a grant of £2,000, but the condition is for them to scrap their vehicle. Then you go to option 2. Option 2 of the grant scheme is basically an individual that wishes to scrap their vehicle. However, they want to obtain, they are not going to go further to buy a vehicle. So what they are going to do is that they're just scrapping the vehicle and they want a tram or a bus pass from TfL, Transport for London. If this is the option that the individual wants to choose, then what they are going to get is that they are going to get a £1,200 grant from the scheme, and then they will receive one adult annual bus pass or tram pass, or maybe it's a bus and tram pass. I don't really know how it is or how it works, but they will receive a pass, an annual pass, but that is just for one adult. And then these adults, obviously, when they receive this tram pass, it means that they are not basically driving anymore, that they're just going to stick to public transport. And after that year, then they may now have to find their own way of getting these annual tram passes. Now, the total value for obviously doing that scrappage and obtaining the tram and bus pass for 1 year, by getting that 1,200 and getting that tram pass, it is estimated that these individuals receive a total grant value of 2,500, so which is a little bit higher than the £2,000. Then you got the third grant option. This is basically the same. You're scrapping the vehicle, but this time you are obtaining 2 adult bus or tram passes. And so if the individual, obviously these 2 people go for this scheme, then basically they will be getting, I think they will be getting, let's have a look, they will be getting £600. So they will be getting £600 each, and then they will be getting these annual passes to go with it. That is also estimated at a value of £3,000, which is higher than the person that just scraps his vehicle and basically go on to buy another vehicle that is ULEZ compliant. Then on the motorbike as well, their scrappage option is £1,000. That is, if they want to scrap their motorbike and once again move on to a motorbike that is ULEZ compliant, then they once again will receive £1,000 for the scrappage scheme. However, if the motorbike wants to scrap and obviously not to buy any more motorbikes, but then wants to use the public transport, then they can also receive £600 plus 1 adult annual bus or tram pass. And so this is the amount that they can expect, the motorbike people can expect to receive. Then you also have the motorbike plus 2 adult passes or tram or bus passes. If they go for that option, then they receive £200 each, and then they get their passes as well. Then the next option is for the wheelchair accessible vehicles. And so these vehicles, the Mayor of London is very generous and offering a £10,000 grant for these individuals to scrap these wheelchair accessible vehicles. Now, if they decide not to scrap it, but to do a retrofit and to bring it up to standards, meeting the London air quality standards, then in that case, they will be receiving £6,000 in the grant. Now, finally, if the individual should go for the pass, obviously for the option that gives you a bit of money and gives you the tram or bus pass, then the individual must know that these passes are non-refundable and also non-transferable. And so this is basically marks the end of this section of the video about the scrappage scheme. It seems it's a fairly generous scheme to assist people with vehicles that do not meet the ultra low emission standards to actually use this grant scheme to scrap their vehicle as a way of improving the air quality within London. Thank you once again for watching EEC Art Wars. If this video has been useful to you in any way, remember to share it. Add your own comments and contributions, your own experiences, i.e. if you've actually done this application. You can share your experience in the comments to help other people to know what they can do if they have these vehicles that are non-ULEZ compliant. So thank you once again. Also remember at the bottom right corner, you have a super thanks icon. You can hit that to make some sort of contribution or donation to support this channel grow. Thank you very much for watching EEC Art Tours. So we'll come back to you with our next video, which we think you also find very interesting. Thank you for watching.